Did you know that one of the most famous witch hunts in history might have been caused by something as ordinary as bread? Not spells, not demons, not magic, just a simple food people ate every day. This is the story of the food that triggered visions, paranoia, and a wave of accusations that destroyed an entire community. And to this day, scientists believe it may explain the witch trials. And it all starts with something you've probably eaten yourself. Let's step back in time. The year 1692. The small Puritan village of Salem sits quiet under a gray New England winter. Life is strict, cold, and deeply religious. People live in fear of sin, fear of the devil, and fear of each other. Inside one modest wooden house, two young girls, Betty Paris and Abigail Williams, begin acting strangely. They scream, convulse, and claim invisible forces are tormenting them. Their bodies twist in ways people had never seen. Neighbors gather and watch in horror. What evil spirit has entered these children? Who cursed them? The Puritan world believed everything had meaning, and when something went wrong, someone must be to blame. Within days, the accusations begin. Women are dragged from their homes. Men are chained and interrogated. People confess to impossible things. Flying, summoning demons, making pacts with the devil. A panic spreads like wildfire, but behind the terror, something else was stirring. Something hiding in their kitchens. Because at the same time that the children first fell ill, the winter had been unusually wet. Their grain stores, especially rye, sat damp in dark wooden barns. And when rye gets damp, something invisible begins to grow. A fungus. A fungus that produces one of the most powerful hallucinogens in the world. It's called ergot. The same chemical family that would, centuries later, be used to create LSD. And the villagers were eating it every single day. Rye bread was their staple. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And these contaminated loaves were filled with ergot's toxins, capable of causing violent convulsions, burning sensations, crawling skin, terrifying hallucinations, and uncontrollable fear. Symptoms eerily similar to what the afflicted girls experienced. Villagers who ate the same bread reported visions, uncontrollable shaking, nightmares, paranoia, sensations of being pinched or bitten. Sound familiar? But the Puritans didn't know science. They didn't know fungi or toxins. They only knew one explanation: witchcraft. And so the trials began. Accusations spread from girl to girl, house to house, family to family. Fear consumed everything. If someone looked at you the wrong way, if your cow got sick, if you had a disagreement with a neighbor, that alone could be enough to call you a witch. The prisons filled, the churches overflowed. The village spiraled into panic. What makes this even more chilling is that the effects of ergot poisoning, known as St. Anthony's fire, had already caused mass hysteria in Europe centuries earlier. People saw visions of demons, angels, monsters. Entire towns believed they were cursed. But the people of Salem had never heard of this. To them, these symptoms were evidence of something sinister, and the courts believed them. One of the first women accused, Tituba, was a slave of indigenous and African descent. Under pressure and threats of violence, she confessed to impossible stories, riding broomsticks, meeting a tall man in black, signing the devil's book. In truth, she probably had no idea what was happening. She simply said what the court wanted to hear. Her confession fueled the fire. Soon, dozens were accused. Children, widows, farmers, respected wives, no one was safe. And every new claim seemed to confirm the panic. They made me choke. They pricked me with needles. They appeared in my room. But remember, ergot causes vivid hallucinations, nightmares that feel real, shadows that twist into figures, sensations on the skin that feel like crawling insects or invisible fingers. Exactly the things people described. The trials became a spectacle. Crowds gathered to watch interrogations. Ministers preached sermons of fear. The judges demanded confessions. And then came the executions. 19 innocent people were hanged. One man was crushed to death under heavy stones after refusing to plead guilty. Over 200 were accused in total, all because people believed something evil had entered their village. But what if it wasn't the devil? What if it was their food? It wasn't until the 1970s, nearly 300 years later, that a behavioral scientist named Linda Caporael revisited the original documents: weather reports, harvest records, descriptions of symptoms. Everything pointed to a fungal outbreak, a wet winter, humid spring. rotting grain, unexplained convulsions, shared hallucinations, localized symptoms in households that baked rye bread. Her conclusion shook historians. The villagers weren't cursed, they were poisoned. Poisoned by a fungus hiding in their daily bread. Not everyone agrees with this theory. Some historians argue there were political motivations, land disputes, and community tensions that contributed to the accusations. And they're right. Human paranoia, fear, and religious extremism played a massive part. But the physical symptoms, the hallucinations, the strange behaviors that started it all, ergot remains the most scientifically compelling explanation. Think about it. No witches, no spells, just a toxic fungus that warped reality. A real-world substance capable of making people see things that aren't there, feel things crawling on their skin, suddenly scream or convulse, believe dark forces were attacking them, accuse their own neighbors. In a deeply religious, tightly wound community, that was a spark in a dry forest. A spark that set off one of the most infamous witch hunts in history. And the darkest part? This wasn't the only time it happened. Across medieval Europe, outbreaks of St. Anthony's fire drove entire villages into madness. One French town in 1951 suffered a modern ergot poisoning event. People ran through the streets screaming, hallucinating monsters and fire, believing they were dying. This fungus has been shaping human history for centuries. And yet, to the villagers of Salem, the explanation seemed simple. Someone is doing this. Someone is cursed, someone is a witch. They searched for evil outside, but the truth was inside their own bread. By the time the hysteria finally cooled, the damage was irreversible. Families destroyed, children orphaned, a community haunted for generations. History remembers it as the Salem witch trials, a story of fear, superstition, and accusation. But behind the myths, behind the legends, and behind the trials is a loaf of bread. A food so ordinary, yet so deadly in the right conditions, that it drove an entire town into madness. And today, scientists still study ergot for its connection to hallucinations, psychological disorders, medicine, and, ironically, as a precursor for drugs used to treat migraines. The fungus that helped ignite the witch trials is still with us. So the next time you bite into a piece of bread, remember, there was a time when this simple food was feared, not because of magic, but because of science people didn't yet understand. A time when hallucinations became accusations, fear became truth, and food became the spark behind one of the darkest chapters in American history. This was the food blamed for witchcraft. A reminder that sometimes the scariest stories start in the kitchen,